What Sister John does not know is that he has been brought to St. Ralph's to change this state of affairs. The agent of change is Mother Clive's assistant, Sister Gregory, an enigmatic monk who once played a leading role in the Reformation, but then fell out of favor and disappeared. Upon his return, he speedily acquired power through his willingness and capacity to take on the more onerous duties of Mother Clive. One of Sister Gregory's first initiatives is to recruit new football players, ostensibly to boost gate receipts and thus alleviate the mounting deficit of the monastery. But in reality, because he seeks to use football as a means of forever destroying St. Ralph's and the Anglo-Orthodox Church. This was the premise I started with. The intention was satirical comedy, highlighted by the abundant visual irony of the monastery and its activities. Inside this opaque bubble, the building was a ludicrous parody of monasteries, featuring linoleum stonework, backlit plastic stained glass, styrofoam pillars and buttresses, cartoonish chapel frescoes, and a monstrous mall offering Adidas sandals, designer cassocks for Enlightenment section only, and as many junk food and gin joints as a modern monk could want. The plot was to center on Sister John, the gifted football player who builds a winning team and feverish romance with St. Jenny, the rock star. Due to the maneuverings of Sister Gregory, the team finally has to play its championship game under Norman rules, which no one knows anything about but the 10. And Norman rules, it turns out, are a barbaric throwback to medieval combat, offering up the prospect of football to the death for the ultimate prize, the Holy Grail. In the course of drafting the screenplay, however, two things happened. First, Sister Gregory refused to remain in his assigned place, somewhat behind the scenes, as a sinister but mysterious catalyst for the hero's coming of age. Instead, he roared out of the wings as a character of formidable stature and complexity, barred from greatness only by his inability to find a repository for his frustrated faith. He dwarfed the character of Sister John and transformed the comedy of St. Ralph's into the tragedy of Sister Gregory. This put far more pressure on the climactic game than the original premise seemed able to bear. The last act of a comedy could benefit from a game of football played in medieval armor, but the catastrophe of a tragedy would be spayed by it. I never did figure out how to solve this problem. The second unexpected development was that St. Ralph's, conceived as a holding tank for post-60s baby boomers, began to fill up with punk monks. They loitered in the Great Mall. They shot up heroin on the platform of the Monastery Station subway stop, and they committed acts of vandalism and personal violence within the corridors and shops of St. Ralph's. And then Sister Gregory began drafting them for the football team, a doomed gang of savages who were destined to become animal sacrifices in the concluding Holocaust of Norman rules. The punks seemed to be dragging the real world and its consequences inside the plastic walls of St. Ralph's. They were the next step, the next rung down in the descent of man being enacted within the monastery. Essentially, without lines of dialogue, they had changed the whole flavor of the work. And then, in the final game, it was they who rallied most strongly to the aid of Sister John and the 10, giving up their lives to win the Holy Grail. I liked Gregory far too much to reduce his stature and force-fit him into a comedy, and I was curious about the punk monks. I liked them too. They were the ones who seemed most at home in my absurd climax. Safety pins, razor blades, tattoos, and Mohawks went with armor and battle axes just fine. Who more likely to fight bravely to the death than those who already had nothing left to lose? They'd lost everything before they even knew there was anything worth losing. But that's where their hardness came from, their very ignorance of the hopelessness of the situation. They knew so little that they had no prudence, no respect, no fear, only rage and a willingness to go the last mile.